Good afternoon and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have the outstanding Pat Slattery and myself, Mighty Pete. And today the tables have been turned. Thanks to the outstanding network and Pat Slattery, they decided it was time that I was interviewed for my own podcast. So Pat has the opportunity of putting me in the hot seat and asking me the question. So Pat, welcome.
Well, it's great to be here, Pete. And yes, it's an honor to ask you these questions because, to be fair, we've been watching you and been on your podcast, and the type of questions you ask. You're a very powerful, as I said, a powerful questionnaire, right, and a positive questionnaire. And I think you have a lot to offer as well, and a lot of information. And we're kind of interested in what you've been learning in your journey too. And the questions you're asking they're questions that seem to be prompted by experience or by something you've been educated or picked up on. So it'd be interesting to get inside your mind for a while. So I'm looking forward to putting these questions forward.
You could try not to smile so much, Pat. It looks like revenge is sweet here.
Well, I gotta say honestly, you can look at this and think, we can put you in the hot spot, but the reality is, Pete, I mean, you are an open book, and I think even when we were doing an interview, the questions you were asking me were, they're the questions that come to mind, and we just answer them honestly, and that's it. So there's going to be no difficult questions in here. Maybe some information in here we'll maybe dig a little bit deeper and see where it goes. But again, your Fire in the Belly to me is all about inspiring people and making change and creating change. So that's what we're going to hope to get from you today, is your reasons, and maybe we'll wait until we ask the questions to discover what those are.
Absolutely. Well, I'm all yours, Pat. I'm all yours.
Right. Well, if you're all ears, then we're going to kick on with some questions. And the first question I'm going to put you, I want you to go back 20 years. Go back 20 years in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us, what were you doing 20 years ago, and why was it so different than right now? Or was it?
Well, 20 years, I was in university in Edinburgh. I was in a relatively good state in my life, but just, it was getting out of Ireland and seeing a different land and seeing a different location. It's bizarre. Scotland is an amazing place, and the Scottish and the Irish have a bit of a bond too. So, getting away from home and getting away from the niceties, and I had a pretty good time in college. I I think I had 3 jobs. So I had my courses during the day, and I was bouncing on the doors. I was working in a nightclub and working in a pub as well. And somehow I still managed to come through that experience. Managed to get the piece of paper at the end, which actually has a beer stain on it, surprisingly enough. Got the certificate, and I was in the bar celebrating and put my pint down on it. So it still has a ring mark on my degree. But yeah, like that was pretty much a summary of how it went. But listen, it was work hard, play hard, and that really came from my dad. He said, listen, he says, I have no issues with having a good time. But he says, you gotta work hard too. And I did. I was probably one of the richest students there, because I discovered pretty quickly, when you can go out and socialize, there's 2 ways of doing it. You can stand in front of the bar, you can stand behind the bar. And those that stand behind the bar get paid and got tips. And those to the other bar, generally, they were giving away the money all the time. So quite quickly I realized that, I could be earning the money and then tips, and then at the end of the night you got either free drinks or cheap drinks or whatever as well. So you got to socialize, and then you got to go on to a nightclub and all the rest. So I discovered that quite quickly. So I would get back to my flat, and I loved my technology. So I was buying TVs and DVD players and all that. I was never in the flat, but yet all my flatmates loved it, because they had all the best technology, but I wasn't there to enjoy it. So that was 20 years ago. God, that brings me back straight away. But yeah, it was good times. I enjoyed them.
Yeah, well, that just made me realize we had something else in common, right? I didn't know you were a doorman. I could have hired you back then. You never know. But when we look at the difference between now and 20 years ago, obviously something was different in terms of how you think. Because if you were getting into the mindset of, if I work behind the bar and make the money, if I'm on the other side, I'm spending money, right? So was money important to you then?
It probably really wasn't, to be honest, because I remember actually I was working on the doors and I was getting $3.75 an hour, and actually the bar was giving $2.75 an hour. So the doors you got £1 extra. It wasn't about that; it was the socialising, it was the getting out. I'd arrived in one was a strange city. I mean, there's no better way to do that than you work behind the bar, you get to know people quickly. Um, but also, I mean, I always had a bit of a thing where, as a kid, my mother passed away when I was 17, and I was still carrying a bit of depression, to be brutally honest, in that time. So, there's a couple of things always conscious, you'd almost be like lonely in a crowd and things like that. So, I was always cautious and conscious about getting out there and, socializing and really sort of seeing what was possible. But yeah, to me, it was simple mathematics. The more jobs I had, the more hours I worked, then the more money I had. Like I said, it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't about the money. It was more, I enjoyed the responsibility. I enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed, just being there in the atmosphere in the bars and the pubs and all that, and but a couple of bad experiences with the doors, which put an end to that career. But gave me a real insight to some rough spots in Edinburgh. And of course, being I'm 6'4", so I was put in some of the rough spots. And sort of the final night there was the usual thing, and you'll know this, Pat. A guy sort of was removed for doing not very nice things, and the old threat was, "I'll be back." Well, this chap, he did come back, and he came back with a 6-foot bar. And fast forward about half an hour later, I think it was something like 6 police cars, police dogs, vans. Two of my colleagues at the time were in a bad way in the toilets. The whole place, it was just a riot, an absolute riot. And I think it was then I phoned home, and Dad was like, "Seriously, for 3.75 an hour? What are you doing?" And that, that was the end of that. But I got to do some of like the Rolling Stones gigs and stuff like that. I did some of the Doors there, so it was good fun. But yeah, I think time for money in that instance, or time for, energy for money, just sometimes you gotta pick and choose what you're doing.
You know, I'm just sitting here listening to you telling those stories, and it's brought me right back. But but the importance of that age, and getting out and meeting lots of more people in terms of the education you got from around the hospitality industry in general. How valuable was that to you, and how does it stand to you today?
It's a weird thing, and it was always strange being a tall person. People have an attitude of who you are and what you are. So unfortunately, you'd almost a tall bouncer was actually more a threat than a short bouncer, or even in the bars or whatever, because people have this attitude that what people will come across. But actually, what I did tend to find is the taller person sees everything first. And I found myself actually quite intuitive. Now, I didn't recognize my intuition until sort of later on in life, but you get a sense, and it sounds strange and hard to do it, but whether it's dealing with somebody or a situation or the energy in a room. And, if you're looking out for, as you are when you're doing the doors, even behind the bar, I mean, I did doorman's duties when I was working behind the bar, and you just know when something's about to kick off. The energy change in the room, and you could sense it, and you could feel it, what was going on. So I didn't properly recognize that till it was later on, because like I say, I sort of slightly kept myself to myself, but I wasn't shy about coming forward either. And yeah, so that's learning people, different attitudes. I think very quickly you realize, some people are just out for a good time. Some people are out to prove themselves. Some people, everyone's different. So you see so many different things, and then you throw drink into the mix and drugs and all sorts into the mix. It's, yeah, people watching, it's, people do people watching for sport. I used to do it as sort of a job and something I enjoyed doing, but actually I was learning all the time, sort of subconsciously, not even realizing it. So yeah, it was interesting, good times.
So, would you recommend the hospitality industry for people to start working in at an early age?
Listen, I think it does no harm. I think it really does no harm. You get to see, how people like to be treated. I mean, I work some of the staff, and there's one particular lady that we work with, and she just rudeness just did nothing. If you didn't have manners, it didn't take much to be polite and kind. Like I say, and people weren't on brilliant salaries. They were, just okay. And you get someone that's rude, and they would just be blacklisted. It would take them 10 times longer to get served, all the rest, because you kind of going in the hospitality industry, you haven't got much control over what's happening. So you gotta, people will say, well, listen, if you're rude, then we'll return that in bucket loads. So I think it's good. You get to see what it's, how you should treat staff, how you should treat the public. You know, somebody could just be having a bad day. You know, it's something I've learned all through life is you never know what's going on behind closed doors. Um, you know, just because someone is rude or whatever, you really got to step right back and go, and it's not necessarily me they're trying to be rude to, it's just that something's going on in their life, you know, and you got to sort of take it out of that and go out there. I think generally most people are good, but there's a lot of other human traits come into it as well.
Okay. So now let's fast forward 20 years. And
Hmm.
now that we discovered something new or something old about you, maybe, whatever you want to look at it, why fire in the belly? And what does that mean to you?
So why fire in the belly? Fire in the belly is a concept that came about. It was February, I think it was 24th of February last year. And it marked a bit of a time in my life. You know, I sort of said I was asleep for the first 37 and a half years of my life. Um, you know, and I'm 40 now. I was 40 last September. And the last 3 years, I kind of had, call it a midlife crisis, call it to a point that I kind of felt I had no one to answer to. And it was, you know, I got to 37 and a half years and woke up and we closed the business and there's a number of things that have gone on in my life. But um, at that point, I thought, well, okay, so my average life expectancy is whatever, 34 or 74, 75, whatever, you know, the health organizations say. It's like, right, well, by coincidence, I'm halfway through my life. So it's like, how's the first half gone? It's like, listen, I've achieved a fair amount and I've done well and you know it's been good. And saying, well, how would you feel about doing exactly the same for the next 37 and a half years? I was kind of going, well, it doesn't exactly fill me with joy, you know. It's like I'm sure I can do better than that. And it came down to the thing of going, well, what if you said yes to everything? You know, what's the worst that could happen? So you know where you are today, and you could follow that average line, and life would keep proceeding, and everything would be wonderful. Or you could just go yes, just keep saying yes, you know, and I'll try that. Or you know, what if I try that? And that's kind of where I got to. So with you know, I found myself in like I say, late last year, and it was coming off the back end of a you know bout of depression, and there was certain things going on in my life, but I was stripping everything back to basics, you know, and at that point I was little twin baby girls and pushing them up the road. For some reason, it was cycling through my head. You know, I was going, "What? How is it that certain people, you know, they get up and you know, we're all born naked and screaming, and yet some people absolutely blow the lid off and they go crazy and they're entrepreneurs and multiple businesses and you know all this, and other people don't. You know, it's like, what's the difference? You know, and because people sort of say, you hear the saying a lot, you know, it's like, oh well, you know, you know, I've made everything I have, or you know, if I can do it, you can do it, and all these things, and all these sayings that you hear people think, you know, and especially successful people saying, well, I built this myself, and if I can do it, you can do it. And after a while, if you go, if I was just to take that literally, because the ego jumps in and says, oh, it's okay for them, you know, because I don't know, they got handed to them or they were lucky or whatever, you know, and the ego is a funny thing. It can discredit everything and go, yeah, you know, he doesn't mean that, or he's just saying that, or she's just doing whatever. So what if they're saying is actually true? You know, if they're saying if I can do it, you can do it. So if I take that as a literal statement, you know, and then you say, right, well, let's look at the pattern. Let's look at what happened here. Is how did they get to where they are? And at that point, you know, starting for me, it was reading books and going through, and you start looking at the patterns. And the more you get into it, you more you go, right, well, fair play, you know. And this is someone who has, you know, really sort of kept going. They've kept the energy, and they've kept, you know, sort of always pushing on, and keeping going. And you know, eventually, in my head was cycling these questions. You know, you talk about, you know, what's your gut instinct and intuition, and you know, all these different aspects, you know, and you go on, and for some reason, fire in the belly, you know, it's like people talk about your fire in your belly and your gut instinct and your intuition, and then you know, your energy and your force. But then I sort of kept coming back to, you know, fire in the belly. It's like, and I was like, you know, it's the most basic form because I believe that everyone has fire in the belly, whether it be the most successful person or the person that you know is in a really dark place. But I still believe there's a fire there. I believe there's a heat, there's an ignition source. To be alive, I believe you have to have fire in your belly. And that was the beautiful thing. So there's the common entity. It's like, you know, this is like a club that everyone's invited to because you already have it. You know, it's not like saying, well, oh, it's okay for you. You have fire in your belly. I don't. It's like, well, you have it. I'm sorry, you're alive, so you have it. But the question is what you're doing with it. It's like a pilot light in the boiler. You know, if the pilot light's out, you've got trouble. But the light's on, and then that can produce more heat, and that can do more. So, and then it was, yeah, I was back to cycling that through, and then next thing we were going to sort of create it into a book, and then next thing the podcast was born, and I just love it. I love talking to people and their passions and energies and how they ended up where they are and their success journeys, you know. And we've had multiple conversations. Like, well, such a guilty pleasure, you know. You get to talk to people and talk about their journey and their successes and their whys, which in turn then triggers them to have more questions and move forward. So yeah, so that's a very long-winded answer, but yeah, that's sort of where Fire in the Belly came about. It was a scratching of a head that's suddenly become something.
Okay. So was there a particular moment or an incident that made you look deeper?
There's been a couple. I think having we lost the business through it was about 3-4 years ago, and I think that I sort of took it quite personally because we built the business up to be a good medium-sized business, and my well, she's now 3, but my 3-year-old was 1 at the time. It's just before 1, and she was teething. And anyone that knows, when you have the sort of the tail end of depression, you have a baby teething, and they've got to be in the room with you. Well, that's that's what my wife said. They've got to be in the room, and my mindset's not in a great place, and there's so much going on. And I've never ground my teeth in my life, but I started grinding my teeth, and as a result, then I basically have a missing tooth, and simply I started grinding my teeth, and I remember sitting on the side of the bed rocking, and I couldn't understand. People are talking about success, and they're doing this, and they're growing their business, and I'm sitting here going, for some reason, I'm trying to, keep this business alive, and then we've got staff, and I can't work any more hours in the day, and my child wants me to be here and wants all this to happen, and yet, I'm supposed to be able to do more, earn more, and all the rest. It's like going, the math doesn't work here. I can't work any harder. In fact, I want to work less because my kids are here. The stress is literally breaking out in my body. I'm grinding my own teeth out of my own head. This is all going on. And at that point, it's like going, I got to change it. I got to go smarter, not harder, because, there's something not working. How is it Richard Branson can have 400 odd companies and spend half his days, surfing around an island or whatever? And listen, I know there's a bit of poetic license there, but, very much the writing was on the wall then, saying, I've done 37 and a half years of working hard. I now need to go smart, because if I want more time for my family, and you talk about it, Pat, you talk about, quantity time with your family, and it's a great expression, and it's there. I just couldn't. So I had to change the formula and had to sort of strip it all back and go back to basics. That's kind of where I found myself, really. So that's how it came about.
So while you were on that journey, who or what were your greatest teachers?
There was a number. I mean, sort of it would be 3 years ago, it started off with Tony Robbins. I don't know why, and it's kind of someone on and off that I had seen, and I found myself over in Tony Robbins, and like everyone else, I think it's 4 days, you're 10, 11,000 odd people in a room, you're high-fiving strangers, you're dancing about, there's rave music on, you're going crazy, massive high energy. And you know what? The energy of having a room of 10 or 11,000 people who all want better in their lives. And that first year, I had an experience with somebody it changed my life absolutely. And God, I actually get emotional just talking about it. But it was a simple exercise that they talk about in terms of you were sort of chatting with somebody that was sitting beside you, and sort of saying 3 things you wanted to change in your life. And this lady, she's mid-50s, from the Nordic regions, and paired up with her, I just happened to turn around, and she was saying, says, what 3 things do you want to change? I says, you go first, that's fine. And she was saying, I want to learn to trust men more and all. And me being me, sort of asked the questions as well. Can I ask why? Can you give me a bit of context? And the next word she said absolutely changed everything, in that she said that my husband killed my 2 children. And to the point, it just floored me, absolutely floored me. And needless to say, the next 10, 15 minutes of the workshop was very emotional for her and for me and all the rest, And she said, it had been 7 years at the time since it had happened. And, she was just going through day by day, and she was here to be a better person and try and grow, And just before the exercise was over, and she's like, "Oh, sorry, you didn't get any time to tell me what your problems are, or what you wanted to change." I got my sheet of paper and I'm shredding it. I'm going, you never ever know what's going on in someone's life, and that story, there was more of those stories through that year and the following year, and going, you just never know.
Compared
It's
to what, huh?
exactly. It's never mind read. Just because somebody's angry doesn't mean they're angry at you. It could be something else in their life, and sometimes asking a question, sometimes just being there, just going through. Don't presume, don't mind read, don't do ever. Just ask the question, and people, if they want to tell you, they'll tell you, and you can change their lives.
Oh, so now that we've discovered the 20-year-old you and the current you, knowing what you now know, what would you advise that 20-year-old based on the journey you've had over the last 20 years?
Um, I think a couple of things. I mean, I loved the energy that I had in my 20s, and it was sort of very much a can-do attitude. In hindsight, the smarter, not harder. It's a very heavily used statement, but working smarter, not harder. Thankfully, I was a little bit ahead of my time in that I loved property. So I worked a lot at a corporate job, and I gave my heart and my soul into that job. I also had the gumption. I sacrificed my sort of personal life and sort of social outgoings to build a property portfolio, residential property portfolio, and thankfully, I sort of had the sort of sense to do that. And that really comes from my family. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in my family and things. So yeah, at the time it was kind of going, I hope this is all worth it. I never forget it, coming home from a corporate job, and a particular flat I had bought and I'd moved into because I had rented out the place that I was living in. I had rented it out, and I'd rented quicker than I thought, so that's where I was living. But I had to move into this building side of a flat, and getting home, and I'd been sanding walls and doing all this, and just absolutely wrecked. And getting into bed, and the whole bed was covered in like dust from when I've been sanding the walls. And I just slapped the pillow, and this cloud of dust came up. It's like all this, building dust and just on the pillow. And I was so tired, I just shrugged and just got into bed anyway. And it was just, part of me loved it. Those days it was bloody hard, and but at the same time, I just had this thirst and this drive and this absolute knowingness that there was a reason, there was a point to this. And I caught the tail end of the sort of property rise, etc., through from 2000 to 2006, 2007. And but I think now I look for having sort of at least about 9 sources of income. Because otherwise you're always exchanging time for money. You need to find a method of earning money while you sleep. Information assets, passive assets, financial assets, data assets. If you don't have those, you'll always exchange time for money. And I know you're a big advocate of that, Pat, as well. And it's, what are you giving your time to? And again, another one of your sayings there is, is it going to make the boat go faster? Is focusing your mind on exactly what part it is. Is it earning you money? Why are you doing it? And is it going to make the boat go faster? So yeah, there's quite a lot of learnings I would give back.
Okay. We're learning a huge amount about you, Pete, I gotta say. But one question I have to ask you right now, I think, is do you love yourself?
I do now. I do know. It's taken over 37.5 years to understand that question, to be able to answer it, and to then genuinely be able to answer it. And realistically, it's probably only in the last 18 months, year to 18 months, that I've said I've loved giving myself time. And I think that's, youth wears off, and you bull on when you're young. You've got the energy to drive forward no matter what, and energy and youth will disguise a lot of mistakes, and that's fine. You can get on with it. I think as you get old and you want to slow down a bit and you want to enjoy the quality, um, that's when you gotta sort of, any of the wee gremlins or any of the wee things that are working away in the background, you got to bring them out and sort them out. And for me, that's really what I've been doing in the last 3 years, is going through with the help of the likes of yourself and other mentors as well, and that's been something quite significant. I know from a number of things, you've taught me a hell of a lot, and being surrounded by other outstanding people makes a huge difference. Um, there's been elements there, again, of Tony Robbins. There's been some stuff there with Bob Proctor, and just different things. And not being afraid to ask. When I decided there, originally Fire in the Belly was going to go straight into a book, and I discovered last year at the same time that I was dyslexic and ADHD. So you kind of go, oh, this is going to be fun. The dyslexic writes a book, And it's not that I can't write. It's just that it's something I don't do for leisure or pleasure. So reading and writing are they're just not that high. Ironically, overall, I have an above average IQ, but that's in terms of visualization, creativity, and on that side. So that very much is over average, whereas my reading and writing are under average. But the point of that was, I wanted to write a book. So quite simply, one of the first things I did is go and get a book coach. So I did. I got a book coach, and it was a great start. And to do it, we were going to interview a lot of people for Fire in the Belly and find out their passions, and then chop it all down and say, right, well, that's it. We'll use the 5% from that conversation and this conversation. We'll plug it all together, and we'll get a book. And then after a while, you realize, like, do you know what? I know we've taken the best 5%, but the problem is we've left 95% on the floor. And in this day and age, the technology and all the rest is like going, it's disrespectful, and there's too much good stuff there to leave. And just by coincidence, then I ended up on a property or in a podcast course, and I just knew straight away. I had no drive or intentions to go on. I'm not a very ego-driven person, so I'm not looking the limelight. But for me, it was the perfect vehicle for getting the stories of these people. And everyone's Fire in the Belly is different. Yours is different, mine is different. And the beautiful thing is, there's no right, there's no wrong. I might get passionate about cars, or I might get passionate about houses or property, and everyone else looks at me and going, why do you feel that? I mean, it's just a house, it's just a car, whatever, but it's all personal. And it might be that I want a certain type of car because it's a certain memory and a certain thing. And that's the beautiful thing, is that there's no right or wrong answers. Your Fire in the Belly and your passion is your passion. And when you've hit someone's passion because they won't shut up. that's the thing. You ever see someone going, bloody hell, you talk the legs off you? It's like a salesman's like, I'll just buy it from you because just to get rid of you, or I buy it because I can sense your energy. And that energy is infectious. When someone's talking about going, I love to do this, and God, I want to create this, and suddenly the whole universe almost bends to help them, and people help them, and and that's the one thing I love. So yeah, no, it's been great. So there's some mentors. I think asking the question, looking around, I'll have mentors to the day I die. At 37 and a half, I left university, and I did all that, and I thought all my learning's over. And I'll do a bit of continuous professional development, the old CPD, and that's about it. Since then, I've realized I'll be reading and getting taught stuff even when I've been lowered into the grave. They'll be telling me something I didn't know, and it's great. I love it. Now I enjoy reading, specifically more so I enjoy listening, and ironically, that's kind of where Fire in the Belly's led me to.
So now that you could answer that you do love yourself, why is that so important?
I think if it's the origin of everything. If you don't love yourself, well, how can you expect others to love you? How can you expect other people to respect you? How can you expect, help others to love themselves? Um, it's like a foundation of a house. You can build something, but it can be a false god, it can be a false house or whatever. But the problem is, if the foundation is not strong, and it's just there, and it's kind of a. This is the one thing I've found with Fire in the Belly. When people start talking, you know, because it's sort of timelining and exactly what you're doing with me here, and it's, you go back and you listen to people's language, and I love to do this and I love to do that, but what you're doing is cutting through layers of crap basically, and disbeliefs and all the rest. But when you strip all that back and you find out what people's passions were, and it's going, I love to, I love helping people. It's just something I love to do, because you do got to watch out in terms of, the old expression, your voids are your values, and that's something else. It might be that I was lonely as a kid or something else, and now I want to do something that always helps people. And it's like, well, is that actually what you want, or is that fulfilling a previous void in your life? So, I think finding stuff that's, where the ego is not at play. It's like going, are you doing this for likes? And there's a great saying there, it's, you can't take likes to the bank, and it's a great saying, because simply, and it's going, what can you do with that? Great, fair enough, you get a great feedback and great reception, but are you a better person for that? Do you feel better? um so I think by stripping all that back, and you find out your passion and find out your purpose, and liking yourself and loving yourself, at that point, to me, it's almost like you jump onto this very, very fine golden thread that's going up into the universe. It's like a guitar string when it's perfectly in tune, or something else. It's just there, when you cut out all the other crap and you kind of go, nothing else actually matters. It genuinely is. When you find your passion, and you're happy to do it, and you can live by it, then that's all you need. Because it's the simplest forms, and it means everything to you. It satisfies your needs, your wants, your desires, everything else. And funny, humans love to give stuff away. you know Giving is gaining. It's all about that. So the number of times people sort of, always the greedy bugger and all that, and it's like, well, chances are the greed's actually coming from a void, but actually what people want to do is help others. So the more that actually you help others, and the more you do that, then actually the more you get in terms of energy. So for me, I've enjoyed the simplicity of life. I've enjoyed talking to people. I enjoy doing things, and I love surprising myself every day. I do need pushed, and that's why I have mentors, and I always will do. And we all need a good kick in the backside. But that's good too, because it stretches you, and just pushes you on a wee bit. So yeah, I do. I love myself, and it's taken a while, and it's been a fun journey, and I'm enjoying and looking forward. I'm leaning forward, looking forward to the things that are coming up.
Okay, so even learning here why you love yourself, and the things that you're enjoying, the things you love doing, and looking forward. What do you feel your purpose is?
Right now, I'd say my purpose is to help other people find their fire in the belly. It's something, my fire in the belly is the fire in the belly process. And I know already I'm probably responsible for the guts of at least about 10 businesses that have been set up. People have reached out to me again. They've gone from what I would call an average life to suddenly they're doing outstanding things. They've really sort of leapt forward. So I think it's being the catalyst of that. Being a promoter, being a catalyst, and um, you know that's what I love about the process, and helping other people. And it's that giving back is something I'm glad to do. It's lovely to see someone that's doing really well, because again, it's givers gain. You get energy back from helping others, and then vice versa. It all goes round in a sweet universe. um, Before that, like a lot of people, you think, oh, what does it matter who's watching or who's listening? Whereas now, for me, honesty, integrity, and things like that are something that's really sort of I keep coming back to. And if something's not sitting with me well, I don't care who's listening or looking or whatever. It's like I'll do what's right by me. And that's the thing. So it's yeah. So it's, I don't know if I've answered the question, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you also touched on your values here, which I think are important. So you kind of saved me another question. But Let me ask you something else then. What do you see as your greatest achievements so far?
Um, there's probably a number of things. I mean, meeting my wife and my three beautiful daughters, it's been life changing. It took me 6 months, when my daughter was 6 months before I actually connected with her. Weirdly, because a lot of people say, oh, when you see your child, you'll be instantly connected, and I didn't get that. I was sort of emotionally void or whatever. But 6 months in, when a child starts to be able to want and to recognize and to respond, that's when I suddenly, fell in love with my daughter. And, we have a very strong bond now, and that was really special, really special. And I think probably my most recent, thing for me is finding fire in the belly and driving it forward, and it's the likes of help with the likes of yourself, Pat, as well, and other people in terms of, getting amazing speakers and sort of finding the voice and helping other people find the voice. It's a great achievement, and seeing people blossom, and the amount of other podcasts that I've triggered, and people suddenly found their passion, and they go off like a rocket. It's great. It's like, after a while, some people go off with such energy. You're like, God, bring me with you, But it's true. It's they've suddenly found their passion, and as I say to someone, you found it whenever you're googling, at 2 o'clock in the morning, something about your passion, and it's not about the money, it's not about the time, but it's, you find this energy you thought you never even had, So that's finding it and responding to it, because what I did discover in that sort of time out after we shut the business down was actually, listening to the voice in my head, even sort of, what is fire in the belly? What is gut instinct? What are all those things? What's passion? What's burning desire? And what I've discovered is my subconscious mind and my intuition, it doesn't shout. It's a really quiet person. It's a bit like my dad. My dad was a very quietly spoken man, but what he said was good. And the problem is my intuition also doesn't repeat itself. So if you're not listening, it's gone. so so it's, in those moments, and I've learned to appreciate the silence a lot more, so whether it be, I still struggle with meditation. I think it's just a busy brain, but go out for a walk, or even the shower. I need a whiteboard in the shower or something, because so often that I get great ideas, and I go out for a walk, and suddenly it's just like it's all played back to me. It makes so much sense. So yeah, achievement was fire in the belly for me. I think is probably top of my tree.
Okay. So do you worry?
Do I worry? Unfortunately, I probably do. Yes. I think a number of things is it's down to just the logistics of, we're in a very unusual time. Weirdly, I have a knowing, which has become stronger and stronger, which is actually sort of pushing the worry out. People say, where's fire in the belly going? It's like, I don't know, but I also know it's going to be phenomenal, and I can't quite see it yet, and I just know it's going to be huge. And like I say, I can't quite put my finger on it and say, yeah, it's going to be here. I mean, I do have big goals and certain people I want to interview and stuff like that, and what I can do and how I can help people. So thankfully, the visions and the goals are actually outweighing the sort of, I suppose, the most common things are, about worrying about my family, worrying about money. But I also have a lot of faith in terms of knowing that actually the right things are happening at the right time. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at this time. And that's only come about in the last couple of years. That hasn't been with me all the time. In my 20s, I didn't worry. I just did it. I think, when you're a young chap, you don't know. I bought properties. I mean, one time I bought a property on 2 credit cards. Solicitor thought it was nuts. I think only for the fact that we were all in, the guy who was selling the property and myself was buying it. The fact we're all there to sign contracts and pay the money. I think if they knew that's what was going to happen, they would have cancelled the deal. But I was like, well, I had it all signed up. I knew exactly what it was going to cost, and yeah. So yeah, 2 credit cards and all the rest. But in your 20s and 30s, you don't worry so much. I think when you get into your 30s, you start wondering, is like, does the amount of effort justify the output? and into your 30s, you're starting to worry about or think about, mortgages, life, how am I going to have a pension, all that. So worry, I think, sneaks in the 30s to 40s. And then I think for me, hitting 37 and a half, and like I say, just all those sort of different events colliding together, I'm going, I don't really care what anyone else thinks anymore. Um, I'm 37 and a half. If I keep on this track, this is pretty much where I'm going to end up. Um, but I think the less I worry, and now I'm just going, no, just have faith, lean in and do all that. So still a little bit of worry, but I think it's the more my vision is created, the more the opportunity is created, then actually the less worry that goes on. So
Brilliant, brilliant. Do you believe there's such thing as bad advice? And, and
yes.
without giving us names or anything, what was the worst piece of advice you got?
Um, there's a number of things, and I need to be very careful. I think one in particular was someone said to me, my goals are too big. And I think they meant well. And that's the one thing where, and like a conversation, nobody knows what's going on behind closed doors. I've had the great fortune to meet people and help them find their fire in the belly, and the energy they've exuded. Beforehand you go, God, you'd be lucky to get out of your career or do anything else. But yet when they find their passion, this energy source is created. It's not created, it's just found. It's focused and concentrated. So I think in terms of bad advice can unfortunately come from those around you that love you and unfortunately think they know you the best, know you the longest. And unfortunately, they're also the ones that you got to step out. I know me going to Tony Robbins for the first time, I had a lot of almost negative chat, and people, and you want to come home and you want to high five them, and they're like looking at you going, are you, what's wrong with you? But actually, the second time I went to Tony Robbins must have been 2018, I purposely brought 5 people with me who are sort of strategically in my, family and friends circumference to almost basically create a network of people that I could connect with, knowing having had the same experience. So I was almost creating my own network so that, you can go and high five someone, they understand that it's not just total, it's not like a cult or something else, So there's been loads of bad advice, I think, and stuff that's gone on. But nowadays, I think, I'm very much listen, just be happy in yourself, be happy with who you are. Because ultimately, that's all that matters, and 2 o'clock in the morning, you're the only one that's got to answer to you. And if you can do that and you can say that you're living well and you're trying your hardest, then that's good enough for me.
Yeah. So do you seek approval? If so, from who and why? And if not, why not?
Do I seek approval? Being brutally honest, yes, I probably still do. It's a permission thing. It's a bit of a, I don't know. There's times when I have the opportunity to stretch my wings and I don't go fully at it. Why do I do it? I don't know. It's almost not knowing my potential yet. But I'm like I say now, I'm um, of the belief that I know this is capable and I know this is doing stuff. It's just the not knowing, and I don't know whether just because both my parents are around, and you know I go into mentorship situations stuff like that because I'm looking for mentorship. I'm also looking for like-minded people, because it's not I kind of do and don't have that in my surrounding environment, so I'm creating my environment so that can all come into play. So yeah, it's why do I do it? I think it's always helpful to have a little bit of feedback, but I think it's something it's something I'm developing more and more and giving myself permission to get on with it. So interesting.
Yeah, good answer. What's your favorite waste of time?
What's my favorite waste of time? Um, uh, there's loads of things. I love researching things. And weirdly, I like helping people. Um, it's now it's reading. It's very much I love. You see me. I've got the headphones on as much as I can. So reading or listening is now as probably one of my favorite wastes of time. Um, and going through. So yeah, that would probably be it. Now and again, I do, like any entrepreneur or anyone. There's times when I just need to blow out, and I have a slightly compulsive mind. So if we start watching something, on Netflix, we might watch the first episode or second episode because I don't watch TV at all or radio. But Netflix, because it's kind of fine, you can dip in and there's no adverts. But we'll watch maybe the first two series, and then my wife will go to bed. I'll then watch the entire series till 3 o'clock in the morning, just because my compulsive brain says, "No, listen." It's like,
Wait.
it's like, So the next morning at breakfast, she's like, "Oh, we can watch the next two episodes last night or tonight." I was like, I might have watched them all. It's like there was like 8 series. You've been watching it for the last 6 or 7 hours. Like, yeah, yeah. Sorry about that. It's like, so there's times there I do love to sort of just switch off a wee bit because I do find my brain needs that too. It's my process. I'm learning how to learn still, and I think I'll probably be learning that for quite some time. That that's been a real key thing for me is learn how you learn. I learn by listening. I learn by interacting. Give me a book, and it's going to take a long time to get read. Put me in a workshop, and I'll be there. So it's weird. They don't teach you that in school. They don't even teach that in business. And I used to do workshops, and it might be our 1 hour meeting, and it would take me 3 hours to write up the notes. They were great notes, but they were perfect, and I had to bloody do it. And everyone was, especially. I mean, I did some pretty high profile positions when I was working in London, and people go, "God, it's fantastic," but the price I was paying for that, I would have eaten into my own personal time. To get the great meeting notes and stuff like that. For 1 hour meeting, taking it's 3 hours to type up and all that. So yeah, it's something now. I'd learn that. I'm learning that. Perfectionism can be procrastination too. So it's something to watch out for.
Absolutely. And you kind of touched earlier on your values. So, what is your greatest value? But more importantly, what does it feel like if it's challenged?
Um, my greatest value is probably integrity. It's probably integrity, and um, I think it would probably actually be this. It would be challenged quite a few times because I don't think I'm always understood. If that makes sense, I almost like a Labrador or whatever. Sometimes I'm a bit too keen. I give away too much, and ironically, with integrity, people actually treat it as suspicion. It's like I'm very keen to help people, and I just see, when someone's got a passion or something else. I mean, I'll send articles, I'll help, I'll do whatever I can, and I'll sacrifice my own time and all that to help them out. But then sometimes that can be misunderstood as going, "Why are you doing this?" or whatever. So the integrity is one that's runs deep with me. Again, that's probably something that's come from my father too, and it's ironically we put on his headstone. It was a saying that he loved was, live life with no regrets, and it's very hard to do that. And there is things I would do differently, sure, but over the last 3 years, I've worked through those, and there's things like I say, I wouldn't do it again, but at the same time, I'm forgiving myself for it, and so integrity is something that gets stronger and stronger with me, and yeah, if someone sort of questions my integrity, that will sort of emotionally I find it very hard. Um, yeah, so that's probably my main one, I think.
And what if you see it in other people then behaving without integrity? How does that make you feel?
Not good, not good. There's two sides. I mean, I think I really try and sort of take it from the view that, listen, everyone else's journey is not my journey. But at the time when you see it in other people, and I still get it, and and you know this, Pat, there's times there where you're sort of your own ideas come back at you. They're presented or promoted back to you, and like going, oh, that looks very familiar. Um, and I'm getting that more and more, which at first is hard, I must say, because you sort of go, well, but I think it's more a reflection on me. It's up to me to actually put the things, the sort of articles in place. But listen, I believe, I mean, it's a bit like with a lot of what Bob Proctor talks about and all that, is listen, the more the more you give, the more you have too, and I think you're putting out more ideas and more energy and all that, and ultimately the right thing will happen. And I used to be sort of, I have a good idea and I'll tell nobody, and it's like, oh, it's great, but it's like, well, so bloody what? It sits in a black book and someone's going to do it anyway at some point. But actually, the more you give out, then that can possibly blossom into something else. But I think with age and wisdom, you learn to just be a little bit more careful the way you nurture ideas, the way you nurture people, and unfortunately, different people have different ideas and expectations, but vice versa, you got to let people fly too, and from a mentoring point of view, there's times when some people get up and fly, and you're like going, Jesus, fair play to them, and it's hard not to have a wee tinge of jealousy or ego and going, God, I wish I was doing as well as that or whatever, but that's just the nature of the beast, really,
Okay. So, what is your superpower? You might be familiar with some of these questions, by the way.
Yeah, they are. It's amazing when the shoe's on the other foot. It can be quite something. My superpower now, I think, is my ability to connect and to question. And ironically and funny, just thinking back about it now, it was a skill my dad used to have. No matter what, we would have big family weddings, and they were always big. But my dad would always manage to get into a really deep conversation with somebody in the corner. There'd be one or two people, and it could be a 300-400 person wedding, and yet my dad would have had like this quiet conversation. And I'm the same. It's like I get lonely in a crowd, but I love an intimate conversation, a deep conversation, and it's there. And so my superpower now, I think it's not only being able to ask the right question, but I think being intuitive enough to read the signs, trust your energy, trust what's going on, their feedback and things like that. And I kind of have an ability to make people cry, weirdly. It's like, but that's, I think, when you ask the right questions and you tap in, I think if it's done positively and but you get to a very emotional point very quickly, but that way then you get a very, very strong connection with people. And that's, so I think it's something I'm learning how to put on the cape and how to be mighty. But that's really where I'm headed to.
Okay. We just a couple of more questions, Pete, before we get ready to wrap up. But what does success mean to you, and why do you deserve it?
Why do I deserve it? Success means living to your potential. And I think going back to you previously asking there, is like, do I like and love myself? Weirdly, and I was really surprised, the number of people that I spoke to that couldn't answer that question, and there's a lot of people can't. So I think success for me it's something whenever someone finds their passion, their fire in their belly, it's like, it's success because they are absolutely thriving and driving in what they do, and they will get rewarded in either energy, time, money, whatever it is. They will get rewarded. So I think success is finding your passion and pulling through and just pushing every day of the week to make that happen. And that's the key thing for me. The second part of the question, remind me, sorry.
Why do you deserve it?
Why do I deserve it? I think we all deserve it. And it's I think because why do I deserve it? That's an interesting question. I think we all do. I think, listen, there's enough crap and there's enough stuff out there that actually do you know what, we all deserve to do it. Now, whether we accept it or not, it's like anything. It's up to us to. You can have luck and you can have many things, but you got to turn up and play the game too. I think we all deserve what we ask for. So it's asking the right question, or putting yourself in the right position, or you know, even with your jobs, and as you were asking earlier about my jobs, that I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it for either the opportunity or the position or whatever. Um, that's what makes the difference. So I think we all deserve it, but whether we give ourselves the permission or the right to actually do it, then that's the other thing. So it's up to us there to take it if we wish.
Okay, that was an interesting answer. So, just something that comes from that, because you've told us that we all deserve it, right? But why do you deserve it?
Why do I deserve it? Because I'm a really good human being, basically.
Good. Where is your favorite place in the world and why?
West Cork. Years ago, we've always had a holiday home down in West Cork, and we had a house on an island called Rock Island down in Crookhaven, if anyone might know it. So the most southwesterly tip of Ireland, basically. You're right down in the sticks there. But on the island anyway, there was a pier, and as a young fella, I used to love sitting on the pier, and it was beautiful views out from the pier. And I used to do crab fishing. As a young fella, I would disappear for the day. I mean, I'd literally leave at breakfast time and come back at tea time. And it had, nylon string, and you'd knock the barnacles off the rock, and you'd go down crab fishing, and you'd catch whatever. I mean, they were only tiny wee green and red crabs. They were nothing much, but I could have just sat my day out there perfectly. And even now, just there's something about it. You go down there and you see nature, and you see the tide coming in and out, and it's just a quiet place. Love it, And if if everyone's having a bad day or whatever, you just go down there and just love it, And at the end of the day, you just tip all the crowds back in because you couldn't eat them. There's nothing you could do, but it's just sort of a quiet place. But it's when you get the weather, it's because it can be pretty hostile down there. When you get the weather, it's the most beautiful place in the world.
That's a long walk for you to West Cork from where you're from.
Yeah, well, the time, because a couple of years ago I lived up in Derry, Londonderry, and the time the roads were shocking, so it was a 9-10 hour drive.
Yeah.
Even now it's six on a non-stop, 7 or 8 with the kids,
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Ryanair and all the rest have sort of meant it's easier to go somewhere where you're guaranteed sunshine, unfortunately or fortunately, that's just the nature of the beast.
Okay. So if you were to write a book, what would it be about?
Well, there's no if. It's happening. A couple of books, actually. And I don't mind sharing, I suppose. One is the power of, for me, 37 and a half. 37 and a half. And I do think it's the point in life, call it midlife crisis, call it whatever you want. And I think it's actually when people find their passion. So finding your fire in your belly, finding your passion, getting to a point in your life where you're going, I don't give a monkey's what anyone else thinks, and actually giving yourself permission, giving yourself authority, and doing all that. So that's what I would like to do. So in terms of helping people to find their own, there's other book series and stuff I'd like to do, and but that's probably the first one for me, is probably called 37 and a half. And I think it's no coincidence that actually people hit that stage in their life and suddenly all bets are off, and it's like, yep, I'm just doing it. You get past what other opinions and people think. You're now on to just what you want to do in life. I think anyone that finds their passion, or they're not doing it because someone else wants them to do it, the egos come out of play, and it's just their most genuine thing, and that's when it's the most powerful energy and the most powerful decision you can make. So yeah.
Okay. Who were or are your greatest influencers right now, and why?
A number of things. I think probably top and center would be yourself, Pat, actually. You know, it's no, I mean,
Didn't expect that answer, but thank you.
no, it's genuine. I think I think there's a lot of good traits in yourself. I think it's integrity. I think you are the epitome of a mentor. You get coaches will sit beside you, and mentors will help you and push you up and pull you up. And I think that's something that's played a significant factor. And that's something I'm incredibly grateful for. There's a number of things. I think my parents, were great sort of people and influencers in my life. Do you know what? Every fire in the belly interview I do, I learn something. There's been some interviews, and especially when you get tired or whatever, because it's heavy going, and it's a lot, and you're going into people's history. But I always learn, and there's times there when I thought, oh God, I think I know this person, and I've come away and gone, do you know what? Shame on me, because their story, what they've been through, what they're doing, their passion, their beliefs are just, I'm blown away, and that's the one thing I sort of find, I'm influenced by everyone I meet, and maybe it's just listening to the circles I'm in, but I'm always taken away by how positive people are and how enthusiastic and full of energy. But it's down to everyone. But I'm actually influencing myself, and I sort of brought on the Mighty brand, and people say, oh, God, you call yourself Mighty Pete. That's a bit forward. And it's like, well, I guarantee you don't know many Mighty Petes, and um, it's I wouldn't say it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but do you know what? It's like, one, it's great. Everything I see and everything I do, I know I am mighty, and I'm becoming stronger every day. So I'm influencing myself too, and it's having that knowing within me. So yeah.
Brilliant. And last question I have for you is I want us to fast forward 70 years from now. And we're standing by your grave 70 plus years maybe from now.
Mm.
And they're throwing a bit of dirt down on top of you. What do you want people to say about you? What do you want to be known for? And what do you want to be remembered for?
Right now, I would be happy to be known for Fire in the Belly. To be able to say, do you know what? For Fire in the Belly to be a worldwide program, it is something there. It's almost, it's a trademark saying. It's there. It's going. I've got passion. I've got fire in the belly, and it's, to see that, and it's like, because of this, all these things have happened. People talk about a ripple in the pond, and to be the instigator of the fire in the belly program, and the everything that spawns off it. I think that's something I would like to take with me. That'll be my legacy and everything else, which I consider myself so lucky. The fact that, one, I was quiet enough and silent enough to take on the idea, and then to continue driving forward. And don't get me wrong, there's days where it's hard, but every interview, every contact, every connection, everything, it gets stronger, and it's just finding its feet. And I know it's going to be huge, and I know it's the right thing. And I'm privileged to have it in my life. I really am. I'm very grateful.
And we're very grateful that you chose to go down this route, because let me say this to you, Pete, you are an inspiration. You are fire in the belly, and you are inspiring people to change, and you are making a difference in this world. And for me, thank you so much for choosing me, I guess, to be the person to interview on your Fire in the Belly podcast, because it has been an absolute honor. And you are, in my opinion, and I have met a lot of people, and you know that, the definition of a true gentleman, of somebody who's going to go out there and make a difference. And you are a success, and you deserve the success of who you are and what you stand for. And you are Mighty Pete. And again, I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity, and it has been some wonderful to get some insights here from doing it. It's unusual for me to be on the other side of the questions, but it has been absolutely inspiring. And thank you, Pete.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Pat. Appreciate your time, and thank you for filling the hot seat on this. It's been something I've been wanting to do for a while. A lot of people have been asking for this, so it's been a pleasure to have you doing it. So thank you.
Thank you.